important that is as well. And now we're going to be talking about hydrogen. We're talking about hydrogen's role in the Green Deal and decarbonation from Alexandru Floristean, who's the legal and project manager at Hydrogen Europe. Alexandru, the Hydrogen Europe is the European Industry Association working to make hydrogen energy an everyday reality as a clean technology in the energy and transport sectors. He's had experience of working in and for the European Commission, and he's worked to help develop the EU policy to improve processes and design legislation. He's currently the project manager of HyLaw, an EU-wide effort to analyse the regulatory barriers standing in the way of the wide-scale deployment of hydrogen technologies. He holds an MSc in EU Business and Law, a BSc in Business Administration, and a BA in Law, so well qualified to speak. And Alexandru, it's your turn.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation to speak today. And good morning, everyone. Well, and good afternoon for those that are in different parts of the world. So in a world defined by higher variable renewable energy generation, it is absolutely clear that energy storage will be ever more important. While not the only solution, hydrogen is one of the key tools in the storage toolbox. At the same time, port terminals have been identified by the IEA as central elements in the future energy system because of their unique role to act as central hubs for the hydrogen economy. So it's no coincidence that today's program features hydrogen so prominently on the agenda. But before I begin my presentation, I would like to say a few words about Hydrogen Europe for those of you who don't know us. We are a Brussels-based association with a very clear mission. We exist to promote full decarbonization of our economies through the aid of clean hydrogen technologies. That is our mission. That is why we exist. And as an indicator of the growing interest in large-scale deployment of hydrogen across our economy, our association has grown from around 60 members in 2018 to more than 260 at the moment, and we continue to grow each week. I think most importantly and befitting hydrogen's versatility as an energy carrier, vector, chemical feedstock, and as a fuel, we look at hydrogen and the energy system as a whole from a system perspective, something which is reflected very well by our membership, which includes companies across the entire value chain. We start from renewable energy producers to producers of hydrogen, to companies involved in the transmission, distribution, and re-electrification of hydrogen. And importantly, of course, to end users, those companies and those industries who will use clean hydrogens as a means to decarbonize their own activities and operations. And we have energy companies, industry companies, we have ports, transport companies across all modes of transport, road, rail, maritime, and aviation. So, what is the development we are expecting in the next decade? Well, it is very ambitious. As an organization, we are working to replace the consumption of unabated fossil hydrogen where it is used today, and at the same time, replace other fossil fuels and feedstock, gas, coal, diesel, heavy fuel oil, kerosene, in all the sectors where hydrogen can play a role. In quantitative terms, clean hydrogen, for us, will begin taking up market share from both unabated fossil hydrogen as well as other fossil fuels, slowly in absolute terms, up to 2024, but experience a very large scaling up in the years up to 2030. But enough about what we want. That's probably not interesting. What does the EU want? The European Commission has estimated that the share of hydrogen in Europe's energy mix will be approximately 14–15% by 2050s, with some estimates putting it even higher. So in order to prepare for this, they launched last year their vision for an integrated energy system. And within this system, they placed hydrogen as a key enabler of that vision. And it is for this reason that on the same day, they launched the EU hydrogen strategy and the EU Clean Hydrogen Alliance. Together, they would work on towards the deployment of 2 times 40 gigawatts of electrolyzer capacity in Europe and in Europe's neighborhood, dedicated to the production of hydrogen. The vision of an integrated energy system with hydrogen as an enabler enjoys in the EU a very strong political support at the highest level, and this can be seen in the statements and positions expressed on several occasions, both by President von der Leyen as well as by Vice President Timmermans. Their, and not only their, political commitment to empower hydrogen to finally play a role as an enabler of decarbonization has been a very strong driver behind the increase of attention that we are seeing to hydrogen in Europe today. But why this? Why so much attention and why so much enthusiasm? We need to go back to the technology for a second. And I want to point out 2 things. The first one is that it solves a major issue behind an energy system driven by renewables. That is, it solves the issue of variability. And I will get back to that in a few slides. The use of hydrogen enables for the first time the realistic introduction of large-scale renewable energy, not just in the power sector, which the power sector accounts for only 20% of total energy consumption, but across the entire energy system. It finally gives renewable energy producers an option when producing energy to sell it immediately as electricity or to transform it into hydrogen for storage or for sale directly as hydrogen, with or without re-electrifications, and to sell it in the sectors where that energy will be most valued. And this brings me to the second point. Without hydrogen, carbon neutrality is simply not possible. It's just impossible to reach net neutrality without hydrogen. And that is because hydrogen is needed to decarbonize sectors for which other decarbonization options are impossible, impractical, or that simply do not provide the necessary quality which is expected by consumers. So when turning renewable energy into hydrogen, a renewable energy producer is able to access new markets which were previously inaccessible to them. In the transport sector, think heavy duty, aviation, maritime. In the industry sectors, think steel, chemicals, cement. In the heating sector, importantly, and many other uses where hydrogen is currently used as a chemical feedstock. For example, in the refining sector or in the production of fertilizers. This is made possible because in the form of hydrogen, renewable energy becomes easily transportable across time and across space. It is approximately, and this is an oversimplification, but approximately 10 to 20 times cheaper to transport renewable energy as hydrogen than to transport it as electricity. And basically, this helps offset the conversion losses that are incurred in the production of hydrogen. But I will get to this point later as well. Now, these facts were not lost on the world. Most of the world's GDP either has already adopted or is working on a national hydrogen strategy, each of them focusing on unique advantages and needs of their own geographies. For example, Canada is investing heavily in low carbon hydrogen based on natural gas and carbon capture, while the EU is focusing on leveraging their strong renewable energy generation capacity. Japan, on the other hand, is looking to import energy in the form of hydrogen, and it's looking for hydrogen to fuel their large transport sector. The momentum enjoyed by hydrogen at the moment is nothing short of impressive. While things were going rather slow until 2019, with only Japan, Korea, and Australia having a national strategy and France having an initial plan, everything shifted into high gear in 2020. And from where I stand, it shows no signs of stopping anytime soon. Let's look at the EU, the region that I know best. In the EU, 6 countries, the Netherlands, Germany, France, Spain, Portugal, and Norway, published national hydrogen strategies. And together, they've earmarked more than 40 billion euros for hydrogen development in their strategies. 13 more countries are currently working on their own strategies. And we look very much forward to see how these would look, what measures they will have, what targets they will set for production, and what funding they will make available. In quantitative terms, again, I like looking at things from a quantitative perspective as well. If we sum up the targets for production of only just the 6 countries which publish strategies right now, we arrive to around 21 gigawatts of electrolyzer capacity in Europe, which is more than half of the target proposed by the EU hydrogen strategy. For those of you who are wondering or considering asking me, these are not just political dreams by politicians who just want to say things. This is supported by industry as well. We, as Hydrogen Europe, as the representatives of industry in Europe, we're monitoring the credible and concrete plans to develop hydrogen production in Europe. And we are keeping a database of projects. So based on our current pipeline, based on what we know so far that has been announced, we are monitoring more than 150 projects amounting to 25 gigawatts of electrolysis capacity to be built until 2030. And this is equal to around 12 billion euros of investment in electrolyzer capacity alone. And that's not counting the other investments in balance of plant and associated renewable energy. But I would like to take a step back. I would like to focus on why. Why are we talking about hydrogen so much? Why is the world talking about hydrogen? Why do we want to produce hydrogen in the first place? How does it really help with higher renewable integration, as I mentioned at the beginning? Well, the key word of that is variability. Energy production and energy consumption is not stable. It fluctuates daily, weekly, and importantly, seasonally. Everyone here knows this, so I won't insist too much on this point. And not only does it fluctuate in time, it fluctuates in space. We have production areas and we have consumption areas. Some of them are not the same. But what I would like to say that even though these temporal imbalances right now are currently not a big issue, they are all being dealt with efficiently through dispatchable power plants, with pumped hydro storage and other storage solution. But as we move towards full decarbonization, this picture will change radically, and will change in 2 major ways. One, as we move towards more electrification, the electrification of transport, electrification of heating, this would alter the standard electricity load characteristics. Especially the electrification of heating will have a huge impact on seasonality. And the second shift is, of course, on the growing penetration of variable renewable energy, which will not only remove the flexibility given by fossil fuels at the moment, but will also generate new challenges as related to the irregular character of RES. So it is practically undisputed that achieving carbon neutrality in an efficient way will require energy storage. And I have to thank the presentations before me for making this point, so I don't have to. And as we saw from today's presentation by Anneli, there are many options for energy storage. But when it comes to large scale and seasonal storage, there are very, very few options that can play this role as well as hydrogen does. And I won't insist too much on this because we've already heard 30 minutes from Anneli, but practically, in the face of all the challenges that I mentioned earlier for decarbonizations, to decarbonize at the same time, transport, heating, power, the only option is to either produce hydrogen or to structurally build an overcapacity of renewable. And this is, and it's easy to see why building overcapacity of renewable is quite a bad economic option and is not realistic. So the relationship is very, very, very clear. The more renewables you have in your power system, the more power to hydrogen you need to enable it. And of course, the amount will differ system to system, and it will depend on a number of factors like the mix of the renewable energy, whether it's PV or offshore, whether you have in that country availability to other storage means such as pumped hydro, etc. But the key is to remember that this graph here that was designed by various institutes, research institutes in Europe, only looks at balancing the power system and only looks to how much hydrogen you need to produce to balance the power system, and doesn't take into account that the power system is only 20% of total energy demand. So this graph looks at power to hydrogen only from a balancing perspective and doesn't consider how much hydrogen you actually need to meet demand for hydrogen in the other consuming sectors that I mentioned earlier. And as I said before, achieving carbon neutrality will require renewable energy, not just for electricity supply in the power sector, but also for heating, for mobility, for aviation, for shipping, for industry. To decarbonize all these, we will need much more renewable energy than what is required to just decarbonize the power grid. So the question is now, how are you going to deliver all that renewable energy? And I want to start with how you won't be able to do it. And I know this has taken so much space in the debate, but I need to show you this. You won't be able to deliver this renewable energy with the electricity grid alone. Here you can see a simple, and I will admit it's an overly simplified simulation using a tool provided by the Electricity TSO Association. And it shows what would happen if you would add just 100 gigawatts of offshore wind in the North Sea. Basically, what it shows is a complete collapse of the grid. And for reference, the EU offshore wind strategy sets a target of 300 gigawatts of offshore winds by 2050. And in reality, much more will be needed, also with the addition of onshore wind and solar PV. So I cannot stress this enough. If renewable energy producers, we want to access the sectors that are not currently using electricity with the renewable energy, the power grid on its own will not be their solution. The current way of doing things, where you just develop a res park and plug it into the grid and see what happens, won't work anymore in a system dominated by renewable energy and a system that needs to be fully decarbonized. So in this context, producing hydrogen will not just be a way of dealing with excess renewable energy. It will have to come with a dedicated hydrogen production, storage, and distribution network as a complementary way to deliver renewable energies to consumers to complement the electrification and the growing electrification of the other energy consuming sectors. There is simply no other way this could work. So, couple of information about where the markets for this for clean hydrogen are and what they will be. And when we assess various applications, we look at them from two perspectives. How far they are from being competitive with conventional technologies, and this is the y-axis, the x-axis, and how do we compete with other low carbon solutions, and this is the vertical axis. McKinsey actually provided this analysis in 2020 and looking into 2030, and they identified a number of applications where hydrogen will be the most cost-effective low carbon solutions. As you can see from the graphs, there are already a number of solutions where hydrogen is not only going to be better than all the other low carbon solutions, but with growing prices on carbon, and we are seeing this right now with an ETS price of over 40 euros, it will be better than conventional fuels. And this will happen mostly in the mobility sector. So we are seeing quite a shift in the economics of the sector, both comparing to other low carbon solutions, but also to the traditional fossil-based solution. But of course, I have to say that not all mobility applications are equally attractive. The general rule of thumb for hydrogen is that the more heavy duty the application is, the more it makes sense for that application to go for hydrogen than batteries. And of course, both technologies are developing, so this is not a fixed picture. But the probably general rule of thumb is this one: the more heavy duty, the more it leans into hydrogen. And I want to present something to this forum, that for shipping or for aviation, it will most probably be synthetic fuels in the short terms and not pure hydrogen. So synthetic kerosene for aviation and potentially green ammonia for shipping. We have made a very, very thorough analysis of the cost competitiveness of all types of fuel that are possible in the maritime sector, for example, and the results were, to us, very eye-opening. So by far, across the spectrum of different ship types, the only fuels that made sense were hydrogen-based. Compressed hydrogen for small ships with small ranges, liquid for medium ships, and ammonia for the largest vessels. And this will require a tanking, bunkering, and a logistics chain spanning the entire globe to service this maritime industry. And I want to leave you with one information before we go into the questions. I focus my presentation today on Europe, as it is what I know best, but the logistics chain of the hydrogen sector will be global. The Hydrogen Council have recently published a very well-written analysis of the evolution of the sector from a cost competitive perspective. And in it, you clearly see where the demand and where the production centers will be. And when analyzing this, you clearly see a global picture. Yes, there will be different pathways, with some regions focusing on natural gas and CCS, and other heavily leveraging their renewable energy generation capacity. But what it is clear that given the global range of distribution of the consumption and production centers, that hydrogen will be a globally traded energy commodity and will be at the core of a global integrated energy system. So if there's any message I would leave you with today, is this one. I think you can begin preparing and planning for this future, and your companies do play a role in enabling such a global system. I'll stop there to be able to open the floor for questions. So please go ahead.
Hi. Yes, thank you very much, Alexandru. So questions, let me see what we have here. One of the questions that I'd like to, myself would like to put forward is you talked a lot about hydrogen, of course, and ammonia as being one of the carriers. I haven't heard you mention methanol. Is this something that, because I understood that's also a way of carrying hydrogen as energy, and of course, being liquid, it's much more suited for the tanks we have. For most of the people here have tanks that are much more related to liquid rather than gas, or cryogenic or high pressure gas.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. Very excellent question, and very relevant for today's group. As I mentioned, we've made an extremely thorough deep dive analysis of the different pathways for all the different fuels that are possible in the maritime sector. I think we will publish this report in full very soon. I'm not sure we have already. We've published several extracts from it, but we will publish the full results. And we've obviously looked at methanol. Now I'm speaking out of memory from what is a more than 100-page report, so I will apologize if I make any mistakes. But when it comes to methanol, there were two arguments that pushed it a little bit lower in the attractability as a fuel. The first one being the cost aspect. That was how we judged all the different fuels on the basis of their cost competitiveness. And in fact, producing methanol from renewable energy and from renewable hydrogen would be in fact more costly than the pathway that leads through liquid hydrogen or through ammonia. So that is the first argument. It's simply a more costly process to produce the green ammonia. And secondly to that is the source of the carbon that would go into producing it. So the only way to do it in a carbon neutral way would be to have air capture. Otherwise, one of the industries will not be carbon neutral. And these two factors have led to it basically falling lower in the priorities.
Okay, thank you. One more question here. Maybe more clarification, but Charles Papp is asking what is meant by low carbon hydrogen.
Yeah, well, thank you. Two options, so two answers to that. The European answer in the strategy and our answer as Hydrogen Europe. The clean hydrogen, the European hydrogen strategy defines clean hydrogen as renewable hydrogen. We in Hydrogen Europe consider that we have a need for both renewable hydrogen as much as possible, and also hydrogen produced with very low, close to zero carbon emissions, irrespective of the energy source. So for us, clean hydrogen means both renewable hydrogen and hydrogen produced with very low, close to zero carbon emissions.
Okay, I think we don't have any time for any more questions, but I'm sure there will be more for you on the panel. There's certainly more here on the question board, but I think we better stick to our our agenda, and we'll talk to you later. Thank you very much,